Thank you for joining the Importing Cosential Data webinar. My name is Courtney Vance. I am a project manager with CKC. I have more than 12 years of experience with the AEC industry specifically. I also really love data and spreadsheets, which is partly how I came to be your host today. So did you know that we have a ton of free resources on our website? You may have received an email attachment by now with a tip sheet, but if you have not, you can also navigate to our events page and there should be a button for download. Let us know in Q&A if you cannot find the where that is, and we will try to send that link out to you. There's also free webinars, CRM and marketing user group calls, and recaps. So best practices, let's get to the good stuff. Import best practices. You always want to know the requirements before you start. CRM, different kinds, including Cosential, they have certain fields that are required for import. And you want to make sure that you know what those required fields are and make sure that you populate that information or have a plan to populate it before you get started. You also want to figure out what your keys are. And what I mean by keys, I mean the unique data points that you can use to cross-reference data that may be spread across different worksheets or sources before you import so that you can consolidate it into your import template. Some examples of unique IDs are the backend employee IDs, contact email, and personnel phone numbers. You also don't want to get duped. You want to try to remove as many duplicates as possible before you import, because as we all know, garbage in is garbage out, and it's a lot easier to take care of the duplicates beforehand. Now, working file versus import template. I find that it's a lot easier to do your data manipulation and cleanup outside of the Cosential specific or other CRM specific import template. And this is because you cannot import formulas. So any of the formulas that we cover today, whatever that generates, you're going to have to make sure to paste special, which is the last bullet point, and only include the values. Now, if you're a PC user, you don't actually have to click paste special, but I'm a Mac user. So actually do have to do that extra step of paste special and then values. But if you use PC, it is probably for you, just right click and paste values only. So these are our top used formulas and functions. This is by no means a comprehensive list, but these are definitely the ones that we use every single time we do any kind of work on a spreadsheet. Most important on that list is the index match. It can be kind of intimidating, but we're going to cover that today. And also the most important function that you might use is probably the conditional formatting, because it automatically highlights any duplicates for you. So with that, let's go ahead and have some fun with Excel. So I have just a demonstration spreadsheet here. And we're going to quickly go over the functions because those are a little bit easier to talk about at the beginning. So the first one I want to talk about is going to be viewing into windows. So the way that you would do that is up at the top, and you may already know this, there is a view tab here. And if you go over to, there's a little window with a plus sign, and you can click on that and it will open the exact same spreadsheet in another window. So this is helpful. You can do a side-by-side so that you can look at two different tabs within your worksheet, so you don't have to switch back and forth constantly. So I can look at this tab here with the colors and compare it to the one that doesn't have the colors, just as a little side note. So another function to know about is the conditional formatting. I mentioned before that this is the way that you would spot duplicates. So what you do is you highlight one or more columns, and from your home menu, you're going to go over to what looks like some red and blue bar chart icon. You're going to click the down arrow and then highlight cell rules. And then there's an option to look for the duplicate values. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit OK. And it already found, you know, a last name that is duplicated. It may or may not be an actual duplicate because, you know, last names can be shared, right? So another thing that we always do with regards to functions is we like to use the filter and sort option. So what you're going to do is you're going to select your area of content here that you want to create a filter for. And from the home menu, you are going to go over to, there's an AZ with a funnel icon towards the right. You're going to select the drop-down menu and then select filter. And what this does is now all of your columns have these little drop-down menus that will allow you to filter and search your content so that it's a little bit easier to review. So say I only want to see the this person here with the highlighted name, so I can limit it to only show that information. You can also sort it. However, we recommend that if you're going to do any sorting, you actually go to the AZ filter menu again, and then you do a custom sort. And then you select the columns that you want to sort by. So maybe I want to sort by last name first, and then I also want to sort by the first name. And the reason we want to do, well, and then actually just kidding, you got to make sure that all of your data is selected, because if you don't, then it's possible that it could be disconnected when you do that sort. So always be sure that you're selecting everything. I don't know if you saw that before. When I originally selected it, it only selected this. So had I proceeded with sorting, it would have disconnected the data that's to the right of it. So just be careful with that and make sure you're sorting everything together. So then you would sort by the first name, or sorry, the last name, then the first name, and then hit OK. And it sorted everything for you. So now it's in an order that you like to work with. So the other function that you actually may not be aware of, but sometimes this happens where you have a date column. And try as you might, you've tried to format it, you know, so that it would be an actual date field, but it's just stuck and you can't figure out how to unstick it. So the best way to do it is actually going to be able to use the, under the data menu, there is something that kind of looks like a file cabinet with an arrow. It's called text to columns. And there's two options here. Now, specifically when I want to fix a stuck date, I'm going to use the fixed with option, because that is just going to go over and then I can select date as my formatting, and then it will change it. And you'll see that those highlighted red numbers, they had a 0 before them, which is usually a red flag to me that that date is formatted as text. And I can just use date to columns to quickly fix it. Again, you might be able to fix it by just doing, you know, a right click and then format cells, but sometimes, and it happens quite often, it gets stuck because no matter how many times you click this, it still is not changing it. So that would be one way to fix it. The other unique and interesting thing about the text to columns function is that, say you have, like in this address column, you have what most people would call your address 1 and address 2 in one cell. You can actually break it apart based on punctuation or spacing or, you know, hidden character, whatever you want to use. So on this, I see that there's commas separating the address 1, address 2, and I think there might actually be an address 3. So we're actually going to insert several columns, more than we think we'll need, because it is possible for, as you're breaking apart the text, that it can overwrite adjacent cells to the right of it. So always add more than you think you need. And then you're going to highlight column H, do text to columns. And this time we're going to do delimited. And delimited just means that it's using punctuation to break apart the column. So anywhere that there is a comma, which we're going to select here, you can kind of see it might be a little bit small, but it broke apart the data into 3 columns. So then I'm going to hit next. And then that's fine. I'm going to hit finish. And it says alert, there's already data here. Do you want to proceed? I know that we made it big enough, but this is always like a flag, like, oh, maybe I should go back and check to make sure. So I'll hit OK. And then I always, just as a double check, I just go over to what should be empty columns because I gave more than I needed. I'm like, okay, those are good. They're blank. That's what they should be. And then I can hit delete. So from there, I think column K was probably an empty cell as well. So if I did want those addresses across, different fields, that is one way to do it with that. And it does it quickly. And that took what, 30 seconds? So let's go ahead and move into the functions, or sorry, the formulas. So one of the things that, after I set up my spreadsheet, how I want it, with the filtering, the next thing I do is I like to use the clean trim formula. Because if you look here in this email column, the emails are misaligned. And that's because there are spaces and soft returns, which if you have, over 1,000 rows of data, that could be very time consuming to go manually line by line and clean it up. So what you want to do is actually insert a row next to it. And then you want to do the equal sign clean, and then hit the tab button, then trim, and then tab. And then you're going to click your first cell that you're cleaning and trimming. And then you're going to add 2 closed parentheses because those are technically 2 formulas, clean and trim. And then you're going to hit enter. And it removed any hidden spaces or characters. Now, if you go, well, my little square is not showing, but typically whenever you see this box, there should be a little square at the bottom right corner where you can double click and carry it down. So you can double click it and it will automatically move it down. Now from here, I'm going to, on my Mac, it's Command C for a PC, Control C, which is basically copy. You could also do right click copy. And then from that first cell, I'm going to do a paste special to only paste the values. Again, if you're a PC user, this might be a little bit different. And you can see that it removed all of those spaces. Now I'm just going to delete these formulas because I no longer need them. So the next thing I want to show you is Vlookup. So if you remember in this worksheet, I have 2 tabs. This is meant to demonstrate that the data is spread apart in 2 different areas. So we need to bring it together. But before we can bring it together in one sheet, we need to make sure that there's a unique key that matches on each sheet that we can cross-reference to. And the easiest way to verify that is with the Vlookup. And I always remember it as, Vlookup, the V is for verify, because that's really all it does, is just verify that something exists. So equal sign, Vlookup, and then I hit the tab, and I'm clicking on the first email. And so that is what we're looking for. And it's asking for the table array, which is where are we looking for it at? So we're going to go over here to our other worksheet, highlight column C, comma, and then it's asking for column index. If you always only highlight one column, the answer is always 1. If you happen to highlight more than one column, then it's the order of appearance going from left to right. So if you have 3 columns and this happens to be the first, it would be column 1. But if it was the second column, then it would be 2. So we hit comma again, and then it's asking me true, which is approximate match, and false, which is an exact match. I know if you're not familiar with Excel, that's kind of weird. That's just the syntax. You always want to use the false exact match because the approximate match is never useful. It always gives you something random that doesn't make sense. So we're going to go ahead and close that parentheses and hit enter. And if I see the email address duplicated over here, that means that it found it as a match, and that's what we want. So let's go ahead and carry down the formula here. And it looks like it found 2 that say NA. So what does that mean exactly? So whenever you see that hashtag NA, that means that either the formula is broken or it couldn't find it. So in this particular instance, if I'm looking at this top one, I see, oh, that one's got a period next to it. Maybe that's the problem. So I'll go ahead and delete that period at the end and hit enter. And look, it found it because that was the problem. It did actually exist, but there was a slight variation that made it not an exact match. Now, this other email address might just be missing. which is sometimes the case. So it does actually look like that we are missing an email address for Stacy Richardson. So that is why you see that NA. So now that we know that we have pretty much all of our email addresses there, I'm going to go ahead and copy this over to Stacy Richardson because I happen to know that that is her email address. And it should match now. Perfect. So now that we've confirmed it, we can actually do our index match. Now this can be kind of intimidating for some people because this is a very confusing formula until you get the hang of it. But we're going to go ahead and give it a try. So what I want to do is actually move over the text from this column for sales codes, okay? And I want to do it without having to do it manually. And I'm going to use the email address to link the data together. So what we're going to do is in that column A, I'm going to type =, index, and then tab over. So now it's asking me what the array is. And really what this means is, what do you want us to show you when the formula is done? So we are going to highlight this column here, and then we're going to hit comma. And now we're going to go on to the second part of the formula, which is match. So I'm going to type match and then tab. And it's asking me, what are we looking up? So we go back to that original worksheet here, and we're going to use the email address as the key. And I'm going to type comma. Now this may be hard to see, but whenever you're on the match part of the formula, that first variable that you enter in, it's going to add in the name of the worksheet. Now for this, we're actually going to delete it because it can mess up your formula. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And then now it's asking me, where am I looking it up at? So we're going to look up the email address in column C on the other worksheet. We don't have to change the worksheet title there. That's fine. And now it wants to know, do you want an exact match, which is 0? Yes, that is what I want. So I hit tab and then 2 closed parentheses because it's 2 formulas moved together. And then I'm going to hit enter. So now it has provided the color code. All right, so let's say that you are missing, you had some blanks and you need to use a different key, but you don't have one. So here's a little tip that we use sometimes, and it doesn't always work, but you can actually make a full name with a formula called concat. And in doing this, certain common names like John Adams or Sarah Smith, those kinds of names, those are going to be the ones that obviously there's going to be more than one, so it's not unique. But for the most part, you should be able to fill in some of your gaps with that. And you can check to see if it is a common name, meaning that it occurs more than once, by using the conditional formatting to highlight duplicates. So what we're going to do is actually do =, concat, tab, and then we're going to click our first name, comma, quotation marks, space, quotation marks, and this right here is telling it to add a space between the first and last name, comma, and then last name, and then you close your parentheses. And boom, you have a first and last name. So now you can copy that down. And because we're going to keep this for our import, we can actually copy over it. And now we could use this as a way to check for, as a unique key. We can also check to see if there appears to be any duplicates. It's actually better to check on name if based on full name if there are duplicates, because people can actually share the same last name. So I'm just going to do that real quick just to verify, and then highlight cell rules, duplicate values, and hit OK. Now, in looking at this, it does say that there aren't any duplicates, but if I were looking, with my human eyes, I could see that Donna is probably short for LaDonna, and that would require some extra investigation. But those are just some of the tips and tricks that we tend to use whenever we are formatting the data. So with that said, does anybody have any questions so far? Please feel free to drop them into the Q&A, and I will try to address them.
Hey, Courtney.
Yes.
Can you please show again how you were able to view the two tabs at the same time?
Absolutely. And let me just exit out of this and I will. So what you want to do is from your view menu, okay, which is up here, kind of this navigation menu, you go to, there is a window with a plus sign and you click that. And then that will pop up another window, and you can tell, let me just move this down a little bit. If you look, and this might be kind of hard to see on my resolution, but it'll say sample prep 1, sample prep 2. And that will actually let you look at 2 windows at the same time. So if you do want to compare the data in one workbook at the same time without flipping back and forth, that is one way to do it. Okay. Are there any other questions? Or can I show anything again? All right. Well, with that said, I will give you back a few more minutes of your day. If you do want to discuss more or have more questions, we do have a user group call coming up where we will be just doing more Q&A on this topic. Please feel free to go check out our website to find the details. And with that, oh, do we have another one? Let's see. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Hey, Courtney.
Yes.
There was a question that said, can you show how to import into Cossential?
Yes. We can cover that. So let me just get logged in. I'm going to log into our company account here, our demo. Let me just get this off to the side. Okay, so this is our demo account that we have for testing different functions of Cossential. So what you want to do is actually the import template is going to be in Support Center. Let's see if I can get it to click. Come on. Okay, well, just it's not, it doesn't appear to be working at the moment, but you would go to Support Center and you would search for the import template. And then you can just search by using the word import. Let me actually see if I can pull it up. Maybe it's the browser. Okay. All right. So whenever you get to Support Center, it looks like this. And whenever you go there, you can type import. And then it'll say how to import mass data, etc. So from there, if you scroll down, it gives you the different templates that Cossential uses. And it looks like someone has raised their hand. If you could, let's see. Yes, this will be recorded on the website. So you can download your different templates for whatever you're importing. And then it'll download the spreadsheet and then you will fill it in. And in columns in red for Cossential, those are required. So those fields, would be, you know, when that first bullet item that we discussed, like know what what's required. Those red ones are required, but you also want to read the text at the top because sometimes things are required if the adjacent column is filled in, right? So you definitely want to read all that stuff up there. And once you have your data cleaned up and prepped and ready to go, then you go back to Support Center and you actually submit a ticket. And you ask them for data import. So you would go to Submit a Request, and then you would do data import cleanup, and you would fill out all the information here as required, and then you would upload your import template. And it usually takes them a couple of weeks to get that imported for you, but once they do, they'll send you a notification in Support Center, which will also send you an email, whatever email you have associated to your Cossential account. To review it, that they've imported it. As best practice, you want to also create a report in the reports module to double check what Cossential has imported. Just to trust but verify to make sure everything got in there. And then once you're happy with it, you can tell them, yep, we're good, close the ticket, or, oh, look, this right here is a little messed up. Can you fix it? And then they'll work on it until you're happy. And then, your data will be imported. Do we have any other questions in the Q&A box?
There are no questions left right now.
Okay. All right. Well, we will be talking. Oh,
one more question came in. Sorry, Courtney. It says, can't OFA import data on companies and contacts? Will we be doing a webinar on exporting Cossential data and then importing it to update data?
That is a good question. Possibly. We can definitely add that to the list for future discussion. There is the risk with doing that if you are, there is the risk that your data could get messed up if you are not careful with what you're doing. So that is definitely something we can work towards discussing in the future, but for this call, that one won't be included. Any other questions? Let's see.
Nope.
All right. Well, I hope to see y'all again. I believe is it March 11th, Heather?
Yes. Yeah. The CRM users group call on March 11th.
So if you have any other cleanup questions for importing, it will be more of a Q&A session and we can talk about it then. Otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful day and we will talk again soon. Thanks. Bye.